Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video I'm out here in one of my absolute favorite places. I was supposed to be up in the mountains hiking, but the weather looked a little bit dodgy. I kind of backed my way out of it, but it's a beautiful fall day out here. I'm out here shooting some reviews, and we're going to take a look at a product that I am extremely excited about. Now the product I'm talking about, you see behind me, this is the Reflect 100 10x10 tarp from 2GoSystems. Now I've been going back and forth with Brian from 2GoSystems about his tarps and his products. So before I get too far, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate you providing this product here for me to take a look at today. I am extremely excited about this product. Now, when you look at 2GoSystems, they are a very intriguing company. Personally, myself, I naturally gravitate towards things that, I think are a little bit different or a little bit unique and have sort of an eye to detail. And I naturally gravitate towards people who are entrepreneurial and they're trying to do different things and really differentiate themselves from other products out there. And that's what I see in this company, 2GoSystems. I naturally gravitated towards this because there are some aspects about these products that are completely unique, and looking at what you may think as a typical product, but looking at it a little bit different. So this to me is exciting. I'm very happy to see some new features and a new way of looking at things, and so that's why I wanted to bring this to you today. So with that said, I'm going to be very honest in this review. I think this is a company that's going to be worth paying attention to. They already have some very unique things, and I think the future is going to be very bright for them. So I'm taking this as an opportunity to really critique these products very carefully, pick them apart to the best of my ability, show the pros, show the cons, show the room for improvement, and hopefully show you guys what these guys are doing and what their products are going to be, but also show them where they could make some little improvements and tweaks to continue to ramp up and to get this stuff to really top-notch quality. So anyway, with that said, let's get into the review. So this 2GoSystems Reflect 100 tarp is a 10x10 tarp with finished dimensions of roughly 9 foot 7 inches by 9 foot 7 inches. So it is a square tarp, which for me is absolutely the perfect and ideal size for almost all cases. This for me is the size of a tarp that I like to bring on my backpacking trips. It's efficient, it's light enough, yet large enough to do exactly what you need it to. So a nice overall size and very, very efficient in that regard. Now this tarp is a 20D ripstop nylon. So it's a very nice and efficient weight. Again, you don't necessarily need your tarp to be incredibly heavy. It's basically just needs to be waterproof, and so the lighter the materials, lighter the fabrics, the better in my opinion. So this 20D fabric is absolutely the perfect choice for a backpacking tarp. Now as you can see here, this tarp is a beautiful color green. It's not a forest green or a ranger green or an olive green. I don't know what you call it, but to be honest with you, this may be the nicest color green on a tarp that I have seen yet. It's a very, very nice overall shade and blends in quite well with the surroundings. Now in terms of its ability to blend into the background, you can see it there. It's certainly not really loud or overly visible, and you can definitely see it there, but at the same time it blends in pretty nice. So just a beautiful sort of mid-tone. It's not the highlight and it's not the shadow. It's just kind of right in the middle there. So overall, very nice color. Now, as I mentioned, I am going to be very critical in this review. I do like the company's logo, but in my opinion, this is much too large. I think for my own personal taste, I like to maintain a very low profile and subdued appearance in the woods. you know, I like to kind of just blend in as best as possible. And even from the far distance, you could really see this kind of above and beyond everything else, especially when I kind of zoomed in towards this. So anyway, if this was either smaller or, in my opinion, kind of off to a corner, maybe a little bit smaller, and sort of knock that overall size and profile down just a little bit, would work a little bit better for me. So again, being kind of critical, but that's my opinion. Now, when you're talking about a tarp, probably the most important feature you're talking about is its water repellence and the system that's actually going to keep you dry. So the top of this 20D nylon is a silicone impregnated finish. It is very soft to the touch, but that is a silicone coating over the top of the outside of this tarp. Now, where you're starting to differentiate between this tarp and some of the other tarps out there, in fact, almost every other tarp, this is the only one I've seen this. The underside, and the reason why this is called the reflect, this is an aluminum coated underside. So it is actually aluminum coated, and then on top of the aluminum, there's a polyurethane coating. So this has incredible benefits and properties. And I'll talk to you about that a little bit as I get further into this. But anyway, you can see that contrast. That is an actual aluminum coating. You would think it would have some tendency to crinkle, but it doesn't. It is just as soft and pliable as the rest of the outside of the tarp. And you can hear, I mean, a little bit of noise, but I mean, overall, this tarp is quite light and quiet. So very interesting that the underside here is completely aluminized. So why is this aluminized? The theory is that when it's hot out and the sun's beating down on the top of this tarp, it will help to reflect all of that heat and keep it actually cooler underneath. Now also, in the winter, your body heat and any heat that's trapped underneath will be reflected back down by the aluminum coating. So it really has sort of like a dual purpose, using the same principle, but to keep you cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. Now, another thing you could potentially do if you had to, and it was really an emergency situation, was use this to wrap up. Kind of like an emergency or a space blanket type of thing, where you have that overall like aluminized blanket. It's very similar in concept, and that was the whole theory behind this, was, you know, having gear that's multi-purposed and has the ability to really provide some good quality protection in different ways when you need it. So overall, very innovative and very cool. Now, another one of the defining features you will see on this tarp is the unbelievable amount of tie outs. There's like 30 tie outs on this thing, which gives you a ton of flexibility, versatility, different setup ideas and options. So really good. I mean, that's really a critique I've had of other tarps out there. To put it into perspective, I love my DD hammock, super light tarp. It's a very similar material, similar size, but does not nearly have as many tie outs. And so in that regard, that really starts to differentiate this and give it some features that kind of put it above some of the others. Now, in my correspondence with Brian, there are certainly some aspects about this tarp that he very much likes, and there are some that he knows he wants to improve. So I'll talk about that a little bit here, and I definitely have to concur with him. So anyway, the first thing I'm going to point out is that these corner tie outs are reinforced. They have reinforced stitching here and kind of box in this entire area. And looking underneath, you can see here just how that is put together. So anyway, this whole area is reinforced and provides good sturdy tie outs on the corners. Now, one of the things I'm kind of noticing here that may be a little room for improvement, if you look at how this is attached, this webbing is right on that final corner of the tarp. And so really, where there's no webbing, extending in any other direction other than straight on, you can see that there could be potentially some very high levels of stress right on the edge of the tarp there. Now it looks like there's ample stitching to hopefully accommodate that, but I would also hope that over time that stress doesn't lead to any sort of fraying or failure. So just something worth noting, that there could be the potential to make a little bit improvement on the end of that where the actual connection of the loop to the tarp is. Now again, as I mentioned, I'm going to be hypercritical. You can see that this seam is taped, and where it's taped, basically coming off the end here, there is some excess tape. For the most part, the entire seam is taped, but it's a little bit on the sloppy side. And the reason why I mention that, so, I mean, does it really matter? Maybe, maybe not. What my concern is that this excess could get snagged and potentially pull. And if it was able to pull and to pull off, you would certainly lose some of the protection that you need on the underside of this tarp here. So again, all of the corners are reinforced. You also have reinforced tie-outs in the middle of the sides of the tarp. So there's 2 of them, and these are reinforced, which is a very good thing. And then additionally, across the ridge line, you have like a dual row, actually, of tie-outs that are reinforced all the way across the top. So I'm not completely sure why the top has this dual row. I'm not positive what the overall intention was. Now, I guess the good thing is if you had a problem with one set of them, obviously you have a second set. Now, I've never had a problem with tie-outs across my ridgeline before, but I guess it's conceivable. So I'm not really too sure what the purpose of the second row is. I don't know if I should have set it up through both of those, or, I mean, I don't think so. But obviously, it's there for a reason. So I will try to get that answer from Brian. It obviously gives you certainly the potential for maybe another tie-out point if you needed it. But anyway, I'm not 100% sure why there's 2 rows. Now, one of Brian's criticisms is that he did not have the side tie-outs reinforced. So these intermediate tie-outs along the edge of the tarp are not reinforced. So if you look here, basically they are just simply stitched onto the edge of the tarp, and he acknowledges that that's something that should be addressed. So future iterations of this will likely have reinforcement, but at this point these are not necessarily reinforced. So if you were to put a ton of stress on that, you could potentially fray or damage the edge of the tarp. Looking at the quality of the stitching, for the most part it is pretty good. You can see all of this is double stitched, but across the top here, that is only a single stitch on that reinforcement. Now, it probably doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot, but a second row of stitching would certainly help to reinforce that. And now that you see this particular light, going back to one of my original points is you can see how this tie-out is pulling straight. It doesn't have any, I'd say, way to distribute that tension across this entire reinforced area. So you can see how it's kind of wrinkling and bunching, and it's just a factor that it's just really pulling really hard. If it was pulling from multiple directions, it would kind of lay a little flatter and even out the tension across this entire area, but this is really kind of stressing straight on there. So to me, that is a slight area of concern just for the longevity of this tarp. I would think that just having a little bit of an additional multi-direction webbing here to pull the forces kind of evenly across this entire reinforced area would be helpful. Now, looking at this reinforced panel, this is the sort of tie out on the middle of the tarp here. This looks pretty good. I mean, overall, I guess the only thing that I can see is that the box stitching is, it's great that it's box stitched. It looks pretty good. I don't know whether or not you'd want to go with just a black stitching, or the green is cool too, but I don't know, nothing really worth noting here. It all looks pretty good, pretty sound. Nice reinforced panel. and definitely gives this tie out some structural integrity. Now another feature that I like is having these tie outs in the middle of the ridge line. These are basically, if you look here, in line with the panel on the top. So you not only have these webbing loops across the top of the ridge line, but also across the bottom. And I think that would provide you with, I guess, a couple of different options for how you wanted to actually set up the tarp. Now, I don't often run my ridge line underneath the tarp, but you could if you wanted to, and actually have these tie-out points to kind of hold that ridge line in place. And another feature that you could potentially use these for would be like hanging up, you know, a lantern or something like that, or maybe running another little line down between them to allow, you know, some sort of like a clothesline to be hung up. Now, if you look here, one of the comments I guess I have is that, you know, if you were to run a clothesline between, you know, maybe from that one to this one, and the way these are intended on pulling, you know, your stress really wants to go that way, but your clothesline would want to go this way. So if I was to really start yanking on this thing and pulling it, I could see me potentially doing some damage there. And already you can see that, you know, some of this heat tape is sort of being stressed and pulled just from it, the way that this is fabricated. So, I mean, I like the feature and I think it's worth having it here, but I think there's a little bit of a difference in the way it could be constructed that would overall help it, just in terms of its water tightness, the sort of tightness of this whole connection, and how that would be made up. So anyway, just another consideration. But again, a feature that's nice and worth having, just needs a little bit of refinement. Now also, what I might like to see is a small loop, maybe coming off of here in this direction on both sides. That would be a perfect opportunity to clip on some sort of like a ridge line, or I should say like a clothesline underneath here from one side to the other, so that if you had some clothing or something you needed to dry out, you could potentially do that underneath the tarp. And so, you know, if you think about a loop being here going in this direction, at least the stresses would be in the appropriate direction. So again, I mean, these are useful. I just think that they'd create some odd stresses, and then maybe having something in this location would kind of help. And even if you had to, you could potentially, you know, route the line that you clip to here through these as well, and these could help to support it. So anyway, just another little tiny detail and something worth noting. Now this here is the underside of that tie out in the middle of the tarp. So again, coming up off of the edge, this is the tie out in the middle of the tarp. You can see this heavily reinforced area. Again, the reinforcement is on the outside of the tarp, and then you can see the stitching that's holding that all together. So the stitching around the reinforced area, and then that box stitching there. It's, again, overall pretty good, but where my concerns are is that some of this heat tape is just kind of, I don't know, it's like not tight, and I'm concerned that that could potentially like tug and pull off. So I think my main consideration on this is just making sure that that heat tape is done very carefully and nice and tight and flush and even to the underside of the tarp here. Now again, the underside here is aluminized, and then it's also coated in a polyurethane. So it's actually, I mean, it's not like a super bright, shiny silver. It's sort of along the lines of an overall kind of grayish color. The difference, you know, when the light comes through, for what you can see, you know, you can kind of make out some of the green from the outer, you know, the outer side of the tarp, and then that sort of silvery color on the inside gives it an overall kind of grayish look. It is unique, and it's reasonably bright under here. It's not quite as dark as it would be under most tarps, maybe just a touch brighter because you get a little bit of light bouncing around. Overall, very nice. It feels nice, it's soft to the touch. Like I said before, there's like no like crinkle to it, even though you would think aluminum would be. It's not. It's very, very soft, and this tarp has a nice quiet sound to it. So this tarp comes in a nice little stuff sack. This is the exact same material as the tarp, so I'm sure they, took some of the remnants or something like that, cutoffs or whatever, to make these. So it is also aluminized on the inside. I mean, I would otherwise say save the money and don't bother aluminizing it, but this is probably just ultimately made from some of the leftover materials anyway, so it probably doesn't add any additional cost. Now you'll see here the logo, and this is an overall pretty large size, totally can accommodate the tarp, so plenty big to accommodate the tarp, and also some other things if you wanted to put it in there, so pretty cool. The one thing that I think I would note is that this particular seam here, it's stitched up in a couple of spots, but I just feel like over time that's probably going to pull apart and split on me. Now this is a nice lightweight sack here, so even if I didn't use it as a stuff sack for the tarp, this gives me a lot of options for other gear. So this is like a multi-purpose thing that I find very valuable, so I would just maybe pay attention to this particular location here and try to stitch that a little bit tighter and beef that up just to make sure that without a doubt that cannot split. So here we have the 2GoSystems Reflect 100, fully compressed. I mean, not 100% compressed, but it's pretty tight here. There is a lot of excess material available in the stuff sack, but I've basically, compressed this down a pretty good amount. As you can see, it could go smaller if I wanted, but I just wanted to give you kind of a size comparison against my current go-to tarp. So this is the DD Hammock Super Light Tarp, a very nice lightweight tarp. This is by far my favorite tarp to this point, and when you look at these side by side, it's really not too far off. I mean, again, I could probably get a little bit smaller here and really put this in a more of like a stuff sack or a compression sack, and at that point it would certainly be smaller. Now this DD Hammock tarp is about as tight as I can make it. I have a little more way to go, but both of these are pretty much in their almost fully compressed state. So nice in terms of the overall size on this 2GoSystems Reflect 100. It's not terribly large at all. And then when we go to weigh these, this Reflect 100 comes in at 1 pound, 8.1 ounces. Comparing that to the DD Hammock at 1 pound, 1.1 ounces. So you do have a little bit more weight here, but it's not super substantial. I mean, you're talking about less than half a pound, which I guess if you put it in perspective of the total weight, yeah, that's a decent amount. But for me, I mean, anything that's sub 2 pounds is pretty good. So, I mean, at roughly 1.5 pounds, this is a nice lightweight option. Again, I mean, comparing these two, if you look at the color of the tarp, it's a really nice green. The DD Hammock is a darker green by quite a bit. When you start getting into colors that are sort of more of a tan or a mid-tone, it does reflect more overall earth tones, so they tend to blend in better. So this tarp is going to match more of your surroundings a little bit better than the DD Hammock. So if you're trying to maintain a low profile, be a little bit subdued, this would be a better way to go. And then again, this particular tarp has a ton of features. So if you look at all the different loops and how many loops you have and the fact that it's aluminized, you can definitely see why there is a little bit more weight than on this particular DD Hammock tarp. So all in all, a great lightweight option and something that I'm hoping will become my new favorite tarp. And so, I mean, overall, I think this has a lot of great things going for it, and overall probably plenty of durability. I just think that some of these fine details need to be looked at for future versions, and really just the quality tightened up a little bit. But there's a lot of potential here, a very nice product overall, some great features, good size, nice weight, and definitely something that I think is worth paying attention to. So alright guys, there you have it. A quick look at the Reflect 100 10x10 tarp from 2GoSystems. Again, thank you very much, Brian, for sending this along for me to take a look at and review. I hope that my feedback was informative and helps you to make some minor refinements and modifications to your tarps to help improve the quality and again take them to the next level. I think this is a great product. It's very impressive, very interesting when you think of it from the unique and entrepreneurial perspective. So I very much appreciate that. Nice job. So all right, guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.